everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington, you guys. We're here tonight. Is August 27th, 2018. We're here with Shifu Carega, and this is our continuing Electric Universe series. And so tonight we're going to go over quite a few things. There's been a lot of updates in the Electric Universe series
and with
topics.
Just with me.
Yeah. So why don't you start us out with some updates of what's going on or what's happened?
Well, so on a more personal level with my research here in the bluegrass, there's been actually several things. We just finished a survey of a knob. It didn't turn out to be a stone fort. I'm sorry to say. I know. So the search for white giants continues. It's not one of those things where you discount everything out, but the stone platform was definitely natural.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had trained geologists. Now, I did electrical measurements on the site, and so that's all going to be, and that'll be available in the AKHA or Ancient Kentucky group, and probably mail it out. And then in the newsletter will actually be the summary, basically.
So if you guys are interested in some of the things that they're investigating, like these structures, we're going to leave a link to the Ancient Kentucky Archaeological Society.
Ancient Kentucky Historical
Association.
In fact,
we'll leave a link in the comments for you. You can go, you can join, you can look at all the stuff that they're doing.
This is a book that I definitely can recommend. So Jim Michael was one of the guys who started it. He was the first president of the association, I think. And his wife still acts as secretary of and that's how you get the book, is actually through her. They are going to put together a couple of his books and republish them. This book is the book that you really want to get caught up, because remember we did that whole King Arthur episode.
That was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. Well,
it was.
This is like, it's not Cliff Notes, but it's very fast paced, and it is an excellent book. Again, he was a local, and he worked with Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett, and the evidence they put forward is outstanding. And of course, the Ancient Kentucky with an E Historical Association has been around a long time.
Yeah.
And you know, they've been doing stuff, but now we have a group of us, and we're doing our own research projects and everything. And
it's a lot of stuff to try to keep up with. That's why it's good that there's one localized site or place to go to look at all that stuff.
I'm gonna see if I can remember this.
So while you're looking at that, let me do some quick shout outs to some of our viewers here. Hey, to Sheila, Melissa, Greta, Kyla, Brant, Arlene, Corey, Rosetta, Tom Driver, Ricky Elkins, Chastity, Barbara Bacon, let's see, Ted, Angela, two Angelas, and Angie, and Letha, J. Ross, Jasmine, Monica, Jacqueline, Lisa, Carolyn, and Judy Burkett. Thanks for joining us, everybody, this evening. And let's continue.
Yeah. Like, for example, they have this Bat Creek stone that was found in Tennessee. They claim that it's Cherokee syllabic writing, and not a single character from the Cherokee syllabic writing.
So
Welsh.
It's
script.
Welsh. Interesting.
It's Colburn script. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Alison Wilson was able to translate it like instantly as soon as he saw it.
Wow.
But they had these mainstream archaeologists trying Hebrew and everything under the sun to try and And that is amazing. I mean, it's just one more thing that's in a museum somewhere that they're not telling us about.
No.
Because it would be inconvenient to the narrative.
Thank goodness we're pulling that information out. Hey, to all you guys over here on Instagram, thanks for joining us this evening.
Now, a separate project of mine. It just got dropped on me. As you know, I've been writing the plasma. After I finished the magnetic universe, which we're going to go through today, it just got dropped on my lap. Folks, there's nothing else to say. Great Pyramids of Kentucky. If you want to read the paper, it's up on ResearchGate right now. You go to researchgate.com and search Great Pyramids of Kentucky, Careaga, Careaga, and it's up. You can also come to the Mists of Time group, and I've linked it there.
We'll get the link and drop it in the comments after the show.
It's aligned to Cygnus.
I cannot wait
Not Orion.
to delve into that.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot in there, and there is some math, but it's all ratios, and you know, it's pretty clear. And not only is it aligned to Cygnus, but Lyra is also one of them. There's a whole series of mounds. These are big mounds too. These are big mounds, and also table 1 of that paper has a list of all the different major pyramids in Kentucky.
That's awesome.
I put together the platform pyramids, the conical pyramids.
Who knows about this stuff? Hardly anybody.
Well, I just went to the Webb Museum on Thursday, and I mean, you know how hard, even Lee Pennington, who's the current president of the AKHA, they wouldn't even let him in, and he used to be a UK professor.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. So it's one of those things where, you know, I'm having a good working relationship. Folks, I've even found a new Adena hinge mound, a full circle hinge mound that they didn't know about. So I'm the front man on that. And
so we need to do another mound walk.
Well, this one's on private land and it's nothing to see. It's a small hinge mound.
I'd still love to go.
But it's just one of those things where it's going to come out more and more. I will write more papers. The first one is a focus on the Broadus site. I did mention the Butterfield Pyramid, and I did mention the platform pyramids.
So
but
I
there's gonna be a
feel
whole
like
lot
there
more.
may be a book in this for you.
I'm sure there will be. I'm hoping to create enough trouble.
Feeling a book
Worth
in the
it.
future.
I did send an email out to Randall and Graham today. I last talked to Graham like 2 weeks ago, and gave him an update. I'm sure he wasn't expecting me to get back to him so quickly, but I have a feeling that him and Andrew Collins and the Gilbert and all those people are going to be pretty interested in. I know that there's a good chance that we're going to get Kentucky, that this site we're going to get to the cover of Ancient American Magazine.
Yay!
So, but you know, so we'll cross that road when we get there. So
we'll just try to
that's a really great. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's probably more than manifest. Because Lee knows the people there, and the paper really blew him away. It blew me away. I wish folks that we could go and visit, but we can't. It's on the Bluegrass Army Depot site, so you can see it on scan.
You know, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean, we could ask.
I went all the way to the battlefield. I went all the way to the Richmond battlefield, and yeah, I'm working on.
I mean, maybe you would have to get special permission, but until they would tell me no, I would still try.
But I went to the Battle of Richmond, and there's just so many trees you can't even see it from that site from the museum. So, which is a great museum. People should go to the Battle of Richmond Museum. It's really cool. So. That's the updates on the projects for the most part. There's also book stuff and all that. But all right, so magnetic universe.
Yes, I've got it. There we go. It's recording.
We're having a live issue there.
Yeah. So those of you on Instagram are gonna have to be patient with my technology is having trouble this evening.
It's having a kind of a coming down off Mercury retrograde, right?
Well, I don't know if you guys know or not, but we're having a geomagnetic storm this afternoon. And we had
3 times the strength that we were 2 days ago.
Right, and we had one yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, we actually had a magnetic tunnel that was connecting us, so we ended up basically getting a direct shot from the sun. And I know that some people had some real trouble emotionally, and you know, people have been passing. So well, it's one of those, you know, this too shall pass, you know, if your immune system is good and you'll circulate the energy out. And then the question is, why does that happen? Speaking of magnetic tunnels, so why did I write this 145-page, and this is all up on the EU Gateway. It is long, but most of it's images, folks. A lot of it's images, tables, graphs. There is math, but the math is there just to support the theory, right? You don't have to solve the math yourself. I wrote it because there are a number of people who have made the assertion that we don't need electricity. Actually, that electricity is really just a misnomer, that the electron is not real, and that everything is magnetism. So taking a look at Lee Skolnin's, who built Coral Castle, was maybe the main person, but there's other people, Ken Wheeler, and even Nikola Tesla has said a couple of weird things about electromagnetism. I decided to take a look. Now, to save everybody a time, I've concluded that the plasma electromagnetic force is the EMF field, is the unified ether field. And there's a couple reasons.
Which is what I've always thought.
Right. Well, they disproved the ether field. There is some dissent on that from the Electro Kinetics people, which we're going to talk about, and from Distinti himself. Now, this thing, Distinti doesn't know anything really about plasma electromagnetism. Okay, I know because I've kind of pop quizzed him, and when you read the Electro Kinetics works, like there's a little yellow book you can buy called the Ether, I think it's just called, with a capital A, and that's on Amazon. And while you're getting it, go ahead and pick up the T.T. Brown Electrogravitics Research book, okay, which is actually not put together by T.T. Brown. It's actually put together by, Thomas Malone, Dr. Thomas Malone. And we're going to go over that too. But they're making the assumption that there were problems with the Michelson-Morley experiment, and that really it's not that the ether isn't real, it's just that there were bad assumptions, namely that the ether didn't move. That's really the main one that kind of kills it. And what I'm saying is electromagnetism has never needed a medium to propagate.
Right.
Right.
It's its own.
Right.
Medium.
So just because we have, magnets here and there's air, it doesn't actually need the air.
Right.
And that tells me really quickly that it is the ether field itself.
Right. It's its own.
Right. Now,
platform.
As to this idea from Ken Wheeler, light is the rate of induction through this field, I agree. So the electron, to me, the model for the electron is a convenient model in the same way that the photon is a convenient model. The difference being the photon is massless or inertialess, really. And the electron has a very, very tiny mass. And the reason for that is not directly necessarily associated to charge yet. There is, later in the paper, I go over the electroweak model where there's some attempt at unification. Quantum electrodynamics, or quantum electromechanics, if you want to QEM, does a good job of unifying things at a certain level, relativistically and at the quantum level. But that's always, so it's 3D magnetics, but only one directional electric. So nobody has done the work of unifying everything with 3D electromagnetism. So you have, in the paper I show the Scott equations for the Birkeland currents, and I talk about Jurgen's, again, a little bit to do with the sun, but mostly Scott. And then I show Distinti's new electromagnetism. And what there are is really several different fingers, and they're trying to come together at this point. And the question is, what's going to come out on top? Now, the benefit to the new electromagnetism that I highlight the best parts of in the paper is that he corrects some of the loss issues associated with Maxwell's equation, especially some of the things that couldn't be explained, like Faraday's paradox.
Right.
And he even has videos on Distinti's channel, on distinti.com on YouTube.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you go to YouTube, you go to distinti.com, where he shows the Faraday paradox work exactly as it should work according to a new electromagnetism, and violating classical heaviside electromagnetism. Yeah. Right, which is actually just Maxwell's, but it's reformulated. So new electromagnetism does work. And on top of that, he has new gravitics and new magnetism. And the new magnetism, he has an interesting assertion, which is that the magnetic field isn't forming this toroidal shape, but actually a spherical shape.
Oh,
which is a lot more
now
intuitive.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot more intuitive.
Yes, it is, because I always had a little bit of a problem with the torus shape.
That being said, this dissenting opinion later on, you come back and pretty much it's not showing up that way in other type of experiments. So that we haven't overturned that yet in the terms of the magnetic universe. But we now do know that these magnetic flux ropes are Birkeland currents. Well, they're actually going along the same pathway, right? And they're just 90 degrees phase shifted. Now here's where it gets really fun. Disenti, in his work, has found he was always bothered by the fact that the imaginary number, which is the square root of -1, was never actually defined.
Right, but
it's
our
just kind
vortex algebra does now.
Okay, well, right, because in creating, he went back and created this guy's like me, you know. He goes back and he creates his own, he reverse engineers geometric algebra. And what he ends up doing is rotating, and I'll show you the equations here. He ends up rotating the definition of the square root of -1. And by starting with a definition, I guess I gotta come closer.
Yeah.
By starting with a definition of the square root of -1 that looks like this matrix, and then he just rotates it along, and he ends up proving that when you square it, you come out with -1, which shouldn't happen with scalar mathematics, right? If you take -1 times -1, you're not going to get +1 or -1. You're going to get +1.
Right.
So by doing that, by rotating 90 degrees, he solves the conundrum of electron. You have to have the imaginary number for Heaviside, because what Heaviside did when he did his complex numbers, if you have A plus JB, and you multiply it by another A plus JB, you take the A's and you multiply them, and you take the B's and you multiply them, but you don't do the rest of FOIL. And the rest of us, we all learned FOIL, right? So you would multiply everything out and end up with another complex number. Heaviside didn't do that. And so when you see the right-hand rule, that is always you're treating the scalars, the real numbers, separately from the imaginary numbers. Well, that's going to limit us to what kind of electricity we can use.
Right.
Namely, one-dimensional electricity.
That's right.
Like as in a wire. Okay, what he has done is created that rotational aspect, hence vortex matrix.
Right.
And by doing that, he's now proving that 90-degree phase shift is inherent to, so it's not that they're perpendicular to each other, it's that they're chasing each other.
That's exactly what I want to see.
And it's like like a male and female snake. They're chasing each other.
Yeah, just like the wormholes.
Yeah.
That you see.
And so this twisting is a Birkeland current.
Yes.
So now the magnetism and the electricity become one thing. And this is the key to my paper. That the electromagnetism, yeah, you could say it's just magnetism, but that doesn't really work. And I have the definitions in here from Hawkins' electric guide. And I'll be able to find that in a second. But Hawkins' electric guide, he gives very good definitions for electricity, magnetism, radiation, etc. Very workable definitions. Yes, we are teasing it and pulling it apart. And I cover that in the paper as to why our minds have to do that.
Yeah.
And it is one thing. We could just call it Tao if we wanted.
Yeah.
But it's not that there's no electricity. It's just that electricity is the vibrational aspect. And magnetism is the rotational aspect.
Right.
Which are two separate laws in the Bhagavad Dharma that I teach. Okay. It's because you have the law of vibration is the earth trigram, and the law of rotation is the thunder trigram. And they are related. They're right next to each other. So one could say that they were only one turn away from each other as well. So I already had it, I guess, but you know, whatever. So this place we're at right here, this place we're at where we're able to do this. Now somebody just has to take his stuff and write a MATLAB level program. Now I made the matrix multiplier. It can do some of the vortex stuff, but it's not robust enough. I'm waiting. Remember, he's been distracted lately, but I'm waiting for him to come back so we can tool this thing and create a vortex multiplier that you can use. I mean, my matrix multiplier is live. It's cloud based, so you can calculate stuff with it yourself.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so that's the. I'm gonna look for that the Hawkins thing here.
Oh, hey, if you guys have any questions
Here it is.
for Ramon, please put them in the comments and we'll try to get to them. Let me do some more quick shout outs to Mark, Orlando, Michael, Brian, Leanne, Becky, Olivia, Jess, let's see, David, Jenny, Charlie, Darcy, Mary, Eva, Stacy, Kimberly, and a special shout out to Rob Turner, Charlotte, Cassie, Elizabetha, and a wave to Trina. Thanks for joining us this evening.
So here it is. So right after, apparently I was smart enough right after the Vortrix to put the Hawkins. Number 22 and 23, postulates 22 and 23 from the Hawkins field. Now these were written 1913, and if you can buy a copy of Hawkins Field Guide, do it, because the drawings are beautiful. And of course, you can look at all of them. You can Google or you can go in the EU Gateway. 22, the theory that electricity is related to or identical with the luminiferous ether has been accepted by most prominent scientists.
Absolutely.
Electricity, and this is written 100 years ago.
How can you imagine?
I know.
We're so far behind. It's not even funny.
I don't know. It's like we have brain leakage.
Ugh.
Electricity, it is also conceded, is without weight. And while it is without doubt one and the same, it is for convenience sometimes classified according to its motion as static electricity or electricity at rest, current electricity or electricity in motion, magnetism, electricity in rotation, electricity in vibration is radiation. So right there, Hawkins had it for us, long time ago.
Yeah.
He was a foreigner. He was not a American, as far as I know.
Wow. Amazing.
Another thing that I did in this paper,
that was so
simple, right? I mean,
so many years ago, and
they
don't teach this in school.
But you see, I've come to the realization that the issue is when Einstein, and I covered this in the paper, when Einstein got his Nobel Prize, he got it for photoelectric effect.
Right.
When he did special relativity, that was Lorentzian transformations of Maxwell's classical electromagnetic equations. If you look at dilation, it has nothing to do with classical gravity. Remember, gravity is just a word Newton used to describe the apple falling from the tree.
Right.
He didn't know what that force was doing that.
No.
He was just coming up with a concept. So it's not like it's its own thing that's been sitting here. So when he did that, he came up with this special relativity, but actually it was already found by Henri Poincaré. Henri Poincaré died and was not able to receive the Nobel Prize.
Oh, man.
For gravity waves.
Yeah.
Gravity waves were already discovered, folks. They were already discovered by 1905. So
what a shame that I didn't get credit for it.
So what happened is then he didn't really understand plasma, right? So he didn't work with Birkeland or Langmuir. So Einstein couched everything in general relativity according to gravitics. And that started more or less a cult, of course, because he was a rock star.
Yeah.
I mean, he was Bruce Lee's level of prominence in the world back in 1913. So it wasn't that hard. It's not that hard to see how that could have created problems. And then you had black hole theories invented like in the late 40s. And that didn't get traction for a while. It takes time to develop your disciples. And then they start going around and they say things. And they don't know that already somebody's been working on that.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody has been working on, right, they just released the paper. So some of the updates. They just released a paper on the electrical currents coming out of the sun. They've also just released a paper, after I've written this one, of course, with the electric charge coming out of our black hole, folks. That came out 2 weeks ago. It's up on the EU Gateway. I've linked to it. It's an ArcSiv paper, I think, or ResearchGate. So they now have an estimation of charge, 3 times 10 to the 8.
Yes, but like we were saying earlier, in their theories, nothing was supposed to escape
light,
black hole.
And they were assumed to be electrically neutral.
Yes.
Now, I don't like the paper. I'm just pointing out they now know that they have to use electricity.
Right.
Because there's a gas, it's plasma, coming out of the core of our Milky Way.
And haven't they photographed that?
They've got like a kind of a radio scope. So it's not really a photograph, but it's they've radio scoped it. Yeah, it's the data, but it's not an actual photo.
Mhm.
It's just X-rays and I think UV light coming out.
Mhm.
So they know it's there. They know, get this, the hot grains. They call them hot grains. And what we're talking about, they don't call it dark matter now. Okay, they're calling it subvertive matter or something like that. It's like secret matter.
Oh, whatever.
It's just it's plasma in dark mode. They're calling it hot grains. Every hot grain coming from the sun is 4 to 5 volts.
Mm.
Can you imagine how many that must be?
Yes.
Now you can't just add them up together or multiply them across the cross section like that. You have to calculate. And that paper, that's a great paper, and it's also on the EU Gateway. But they can now use a very complex equation to calculate the electric current in the stellar wind of any star.
Wow.
Within their assumptions.
Mhm.
They don't know everything about the stars. And until they abandon the nuclear fusion core model, they're not going to.
Yeah.
And if people haven't subscribed yet to Sky Scholar, you've got to, because things are getting really hot over there too in terms of getting to what are we talking about? What are we really talking about? You saw those quotes in Mist of Time.
Mhm.
Ra, Shamash, was
I know.
green.
I know.
Ra was green. He wasn't yellow.
Right.
Right? It didn't have golden rings.
No.
So how did that work? Well, there's a new video on the Electric Universe Thunderbolts project, and I've of course archived it on the Gateway, where Walt Thornhill goes through in the environment without the sun.
Mhm.
Saturn was able to produce, but in the environment when the sun entered the solar system, or they got too proximal, Saturn could not reach the charge.
Mhm.
It can't keep its own charge up. It can't keep the current going. And Wall, of course, explains it way much better, way better than I could.
Mhm.
And what do we see in the myths? Okay, this is in Cardona. So when we do Saturn Myth Part 2, I will finish this.
Yes,
Eduardo
I promise
Cardona,
you guys we will get to Saturn
Part
Myth
2.
Part 2.
Eduardo Cardona is definitely a book worth looking through.
Hold that up there just a little bit longer.
He has a whole
so that
series.
people can
You get
see
these on
that.
stickmanonstone.com. He has a whole series of them.
Mhm.
And this is the first one. And he gets to the point. The myths say it wasn't that Athena, Venus, was born from the forehead so much as the soul
Mhm.
of the god, or the heart, depending on the culture. And of course, the Hindu, anyways, the soul is in the heart.
Yeah.
So according to the Hindu, so it was the same thing. They're both the Mayans and the Egyptians and the Indians and the Chinese are all saying the same thing.
Right.
So
So
maybe
there's a
she
correlation
moved.
between all society.
Maybe the sun pulled an entire chunk of rock right out of the core of Saturn, and maybe that's why it died. We don't know. We know this: the one god, the central god, the man, the heaven man. He fell, and what did he say? What was that weird quote? It was like, "I am the eye within the egg."
Yes.
And I seed myself. It's like all this kind of crazy stuff that doesn't make any sense. And it's because it's talking about an electric star.
Right.
And that electric star lost its power. And in table 7 of the paper, I have different levels of power. Now, this research, this took me hours to conduct. Some of these papers that I've cited below they've been around 50, 60 years.
All of these are on the Gateway.
There's tons of citations in this paper, folks. I'm not making stuff up.
The Gateway is like a black hole in itself. You can just
It
dive
is.
into it.
It is.
Keep going and keep going.
You can, and it's a research tool. So you search for the thing that you're looking for. But they know that there's currents in space. Some of them are insane. You have these derived jets, these theoretical jets at 10 to the 18 amps.
Crazy.
Okay, your heart is running at 1.87 milliamps, which is incredibly small. So everything is working the same way. This is like what we talked about in the plasma electromagnetic sky. It's all one thing. And we are now starting to see all these things come together. The question is, whose words are going to represent, solar wind's here to stay. It's going to be called a wind, which is okay from a Chinese perspective because of the feng shui. We like that.
Yeah.
But it's not technically correct.
It isn't technically correct, but it is in a form that people can understand.
I think so, and I think that's okay. I think it's interesting that we are spending so much time over semantics in our society about the magnetism and the electricity and the ether, when we've encountered it We know that it's there.
Yeah.
And yet it's kind of one of those, we're going to fight tooth and nail about the, is it electricity? Is it magnetism? Is it something else? When
but
quarks are measured
what,
in
that's
electron
what
volts.
Academia is so good at.
I tell you.
Semantics.
And reinventing the wheel that they invented 100 years ago. So now we get to the really fun stuff, I think.
Okay, let's check our time.
Yeah, we got a little.
Well, let's go over for another 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Electrokinetics. I don't want to leave it. This is where we're just to the good stuff.
I know.
So electrokinetics, at the end of the paper, I'm finishing the paper, and I'm like, electrogravity and new gravity, and boom, I find this book, open it up, folks. This effect is called the Byfield-Brown effect. Guess when it was found?
Probably 100 years ago.
100 years ago, like 1929. Okay.
God.
All right. Here's the history of this. Okay.
Embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. So, T.T. Brown, he discovered it on his own. No one would listen to him. So he went to school, met a professor, Byfield. They did the experiments. When you apply 10 to the 15 volts to a little disc that's hanging, it moves.
Wow.
It moves towards the positive, all on its own.
Wow.
And moves away from the negative silently. And according to these different researchers, they think that there's something called the Searle effect, that you can even create an engine that will create an inertialess kind of motion.
Right.
All right. Now,
you know where that goes.
Okay. Well, here's the story. Okay. So T.T. Brown, he tries to get it out, and people were really interested in the Byfield-Brown effect. Search it up, Byfield-Brown. They set him up with a lab, the military.
Yeah.
He's doing all his experiments, and then he goes, it kind of fizzles out here. He has a nervous breakdown. He goes to Europe, and it just all kind of collapses under. Meanwhile, all these other men are doing electrokinetic, electrogravitic experiments. It all goes classified.
Oh.
The outcome of it, if you've ever wondered how a stealth B-2 bomber is so quiet and so slow and doesn't look like it can fly, there is good, strong evidence that the United States military, not even everybody in the military, just a certain department, took that, and they have an engine inside that puts positive charges on the front of the stealth bomber and throws negative ions out the back.
Wow.
And that's why it's quiet. So it has an engine, but it's attaining an extra bit from that. Now, I don't know the upper limit of the stealth B bomber. I don't even know if this is true. I'm just telling you what Tom Balone is, and there's diagrams in that book. So what I recommend is people, if you want to know, if you believe that the alien UFO thing could have possibly been the government secretly experimenting and not even telling the other, because now all the governments are getting on the media and admitting there's a UFO problem.
Yeah.
They're saying, they're on Fox News, they're on CNN, they're telling people we don't know what they are.
They've been outed.
Well, some
smart.
department might have actually known.
We're getting too smart for them.
Because they may have produced something that could take it well beyond 10 to the 15 volts. Because the problem in lab is if you create something 10 to 15 volts, there's a good chance that you're going to get hit with an arc. And so maybe they figured out a way to control that. We're talking almost 100 years ago. The research started, definitely got in earnest. I mean, his heyday when he was strongest was between the 1940s and the 1960s. And he's, of course, passed on now. And his work is carried on is very niche. And I haven't confirmed anything on the electrokinetics. It is my intention eventually to have low current, high voltage, very high voltage experimentation to demonstrate the Byfield-Brown effect.
Yeah.
The fact that it exists, though, as a thing and was accepted, he didn't win a Nobel Prize, but at one time his name was floated for a Nobel Prize. He wasn't a contender, but he was in the top like 20 because this was a really strange effect that was observed.
But it's huge.
It is a huge thing. And the question is, why isn't it something that we talk about or that we know about? My only explanation for that is that somebody doesn't want us to know about the electrokinetic effect.
Well, no,
or the Byfield-Brown effect, let's call it.
They want to capitalize on it and use it, so it has to be suppressed.
Yeah, I mean, if you can make stealth B bombers, because remember the original stealth bomber was regular jet. The question is, if you have such a perfect stealth bomber, A, why do you tell everybody about it? And B, why'd you replace it?
Yeah.
Well, because maybe there's something better.
There is.
Maybe there's a
better.
discoid shape, and it is supposed to be a discoid shape that you use, at least in the classical experiment. And these are experiments that happened historically.
Yeah.
This is a little obscure branch of electromagnetic history, but it's a very important part that just fell in.
It is important for us to discuss it and for us to know about it. And I think it's important for us to teach our kids that this stuff is possible, because as growing up, I had no clue. It's not until you get to be an adult and you go out and do your own research like you've done that we're coming across things that we should have known about. Maybe our society as a whole could have evolved way past what we are now.
Oh, yeah.
If we, delved into sharing information instead of suppressing it.
What if the levitation of megaliths was just them applying a very high voltage?
Yeah.
And separating the charge, positives lifted up and negatives helping lift. I mean, there are obscure researches with scarabs and all sorts of levitation things out there, acoustic levitation, which isn't directly electric universe stuff, but it is interesting nevertheless.
It is because it's vibratory.
It is. And Jacob Gable, who of course put out that great video with the amazing unexplained effect after the thunderbolt turns off, the whole ground explodes upwards. Yeah. He's been doing acoustic as well, and it looks, the mountains he's forming just from these vibration with the sand.
Right.
They look a lot.
But
like
see, that's kind of the same premise that solfeggio frequencies are on. So.
And it all runs into each other right there.
Yeah, it does. Well, let's close there for this evening. When do you expect we'll do the next episode of Electric Universe for those that are watching tonight that are following this?
Well, I have a vacation the third week in September, so we better either aim for the 4th or the middle.
Okay, so the 4th or the middle of September. And I'll post updates on that, so you guys watch the Facebook page, because I'll be putting everything on there for what's coming up and what we're going to do. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this ongoing series. It is ongoing, so just keep watching.
And more and more stuff.
If you enjoy these episodes, go ahead and hit that share button on your screen and share this out to your friends that you think might enjoy this kind of content. Remember, sharing is caring. And thanks for joining us and exploring who and what we are on this journey through life. Kisses from Kentucky.
Thank you for stopping by.
See you guys. Bye now.